the work never stops, but your life does. So you have to figure out how to balance that
Right.
because, we talk about it all the time. We live and work in a never evolving industry where something changes every single day, but our body also changes every single day. Our relationships also change every single day. So we have to be sure to, like you said, not neglect one or the other, but to try to balance that as much as possible. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by the one and only Crazy Ant Media, where each episode we talk about certain topics that may or may not lead into deeper conversations, but that's what we love to do. That's the beauty of this podcast, to where, we have that vague topic to where we start with, but then we can lead into something a little bit deeper. Today is very special. I know I start every episode off like that, but today it truly is because we battle with this like crazy. That is for sure. Dustin and I both battle with that at home and work balance. Yes, that's right. There's a little bit of, intertwining with it. I mean, that's for sure. But definitely when you're chasing the dream and having to have a day job, it's hard when most of the stuff you do at home is work, and then when you're working at home it's like overlapping. It can be very difficult, but especially when relationships get involved and you feel like it just becomes muddy waters. And I feel like there's not a lot of time to where you feel like you're doing stuff personally. And then when you're doing stuff personally, you feel like you're not having enough time working. So, I mean, there's always that balance. And I know you and I, we battle with this like all the freaking time. The past couple years, we've been doing pretty well at it, but I still think we have a long way to go. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's because you never want to feel like you're neglecting one or the other. And
Yeah.
inevitably if you're driven, like you said, if you're chasing the dream and you're a perfectionist, even though you can't get perfection, you want everything to be right. And so when you are not focusing on one thing, you feel like you're neglecting it. If you're neglecting it, then it can't possibly be the way you want it to be or perfect. And then so that starts to draw on you. And so then I don't know. I feel like so often or not, we start to shift and just solely focus there because we feel like we're neglecting it. And then we are neglecting the other side. And so, the thought of neglecting becomes actual neglecting. And then you figure it out. And then you're like, oh, crap. No, now I've got to go take care of this. And then this gets in trouble again. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting and I mean there's so many different things that can happen to it, right? If you do find the perfect balance, right? Say we are, like you said, the past couple of years we've been doing pretty good. We've been pretty much keeping it, but then you find yourself, because you are constantly here and constantly here, and then you're forgetting you also need that middle space. So we work at it like a level of where now all of a sudden, without even realizing it, we're burnt out. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I need a break because I'm all here and I'm all here and I've never just, whew, right? So you get, so even when you find the balance, you end up burning yourself out because you're just going nonstop at both sides of it. And then you're like, and what happens with the burnout, right? Because we've both experienced this. When you hit the burnout, then you're not on either of it. You can't focus here or there because you're so burnt out. You just need to stop for a little bit. So that's a problem. And I know, because I want to touch on this for sure because this is a big thing. I know for you, a little bit less for me. I'm experiencing it a little bit more often now than I used to in the past. But anxiety. You get anxious when you feel like you're not doing enough for either side. I know that's a big thing for you. And the one big thing for me that I want to talk about, and we'll just kind of bounce back and forth, is I suffer from insomnia. and I can't sleep. For anybody who's been listening to us for all the years on the one podcast, It Calf, and I'm now on this new one, or just if you know me in general personally, I only average about 3.5 or 4 hours of sleep a night. And it's because my mind just will not shut off. I just lay there and I'm constantly thinking about what I'm not doing. And it's just nonstop, which is a big problem because then again, you physically burn out. And I have crash days where I'm like, hey, I can't do anything today because I'm going to sleep for 15 hours. And so let's just dive into it. How are you focusing with, because we talk about this all the time. You get really anxious, and then that anxiety kind of turns to a level of where you're upset with yourself because you feel like you're not carrying your load or you're not doing enough, which is always crazy, and we always talk about this because you're always overdoing. But talk about how you're trying to balance the anxiety aspect of two worlds when both worlds require a lot of attention. How do you go at that anxiety?
Well, I think first and foremost, like it started back when in December. That's really when I started, I used to always put a relationship first, or I used to always put Crazy Ant first. But now, like since December, I've been putting me first. That is the
Yes.
biggest thing. And it's
Yeah.
been like honestly amazing. And I mean, I had enough courage to, before even talking to my then fiance, now wife, to where like I had the courage a month prior to the wedding to be like, okay, I need to step back. So I didn't even have that conversation with her before I even had that conversation with you. So me being on my own journey of putting myself first has been honestly the best thing for me. And I know we speak about this all the time. Exercise has
Yeah.
really been like a meditative um structure for me just to be able to shut everything else out. Like even if I'm still listening to an entertainment based podcast or listening to, something that I still am able to bring knowledge into what we're doing or what, I'm doing with my mental health. It still gives me that opportunity to physically not do anything but exercise and continue moving forward. And I know I've been tweeting about it a lot recently and talking about it a lot with you. And I know you have already read the book, but I've been reading Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
And when I was reading it this morning, it honestly sparked a quote into like into my head that has to do a lot with this topic of conversation, which is the work never stops, but your life does. So you have to figure out how to balance that
Right.
because we talk about it all the time. We live and work in a never evolving industry where something changes every single day, but our body also changes every single day. Our relationships also change every single day. So we have to be sure to, like you said, not neglect one or the other, but to try to balance that as much as possible. Like right now, specifically, since we've gotten back from our little wedding break, I have been very, this is my list for the day. You're not going to add anything else onto it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do that because I need to be able to separate and to be able to spend time with those who I care with the most. So that's been honestly very helpful. To be very structured is honestly very helpful for me as well. To not only have a list for everything we're doing with the company with Crazy Ant, but I also have a personal list that I
Yeah.
need to get done during the day too. Like I do 30 minutes of journaling, whether that be for personal or I just bought a notebook for Crazy Ant that's specifically about Crazy Ant stuff too. So that's also been helping with balance. So I'm not writing everything in one notebook. Okay, this one's dedicated to business, this one's dedicated to personal. That's just me personally trying to figure out, separating in thought processes and separating in life as well. So that's been very helpful to be able to do due diligence, right? To be able
Yeah.
to separate and to be able to, turn it off at the end of the day and to have times where, it does go past that 5 or 6 p.m. Because I still want to get everything done on the list. But if it's not that important, we've been talking about this a lot recently too. If on the list, if it's not so time constrained, then that can get pushed to the next day.
Yeah.
that can get
Yeah.
pushed to the next week. So yeah, it's been very important to me to be able to, stick to the list and not add anything else onto it. That's been very helpful for my anxiety to where I don't feel overwhelmed, to where I don't get that burnout, and to where things are happy in the relationship as well. So that's been very helpful.
Well, and the thing that I had a really hard time with at first, and now I'm just kind of like letting everything be as it is. It's like because I too am very structured. Everything is there's an agenda. There's a okay, you got to attack this, and but for the longest time I was like I would stay at it until every single thing was checked off. And I have like really come to this understanding in my life, and this is business and personal, both the work life and the personal life, that it's okay if something doesn't get done that day. It's okay.
Hmm.
If it was on your task list for the day, but you didn't get to it, the world is not going to collapse. Everything will be fine. Likely you'll be able to pick that up the next day or something like that. And I used to have a really hard time doing that. But now I'm just like, okay, I have my list. I have what I'm setting out to do today, and I'm going to try to get through it. But like you just said, life doesn't stop. It happens. So you might have a laid out agenda, but something may interrupt the agenda for the day, and it might push something back, and therefore later on down the line you can't get to it. And you just have to understand that there are some things that are going to happen like that are just not in your control, and you can't lay that on you. You can't put that on you going, I should have been able to still get it all done. Well, you didn't know this was going to happen. So it's okay that that wasn't scheduled in your things to do day. And so that's where I used to struggle. But like you, my journey, it's kind of been, I am learning every day more and more and more that it is not selfish to focus on yourself. In fact, it's necessary to focus on yourself because you can't be the person that you need to be in your work life or your personal life if you can't be okay with yourself. So if you're not good, you can't possibly be good for either of anything else that you're trying to do in your life. So it's okay to focus on yourself. And so, yeah, I do. I'm learning more and more every day through my journey to just take time, breathe, relax, focus on me. What do I need to get done today? What do I need to feel today? What do I need to write down today? Then I can go here. Then I can go here. But and that's a struggle sometimes. Like, look, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's like I feel guilty for doing that. Maybe I shouldn't take today. Every time that I don't know, you and I have both done this. It's like, hey man, today I'm just not gonna, can you cover this? Can you cover that? I'm just not feeling it today. I used to struggle with that. I used to be like, oh, no, I'm letting somebody down, or I'm not carrying this, or I'm not. But now I'm getting to that point with, no, if I have a day where I'm just not mentally there and I need to take that step back, that's okay. That's how you find that balance. And it just, because if you don't do that, right, then you're going to start resenting things. I think you start resenting the fact that you didn't get that time. You resent the fact you didn't get to go do this, or you weren't a part of that. And then that resentment leads to a decrease in workload. You're angry, so you're not focused on what you're trying to do. And you're not, and so now everything is starting to steamroll into that bad thing where you're not getting anything done. You're becoming unproductive, and because you didn't take that time to focus on yourself. And so, I mean, that's a big part of, I think, for anybody out there listening who is trying to do what we're doing and chase the dream. And personal lives are hard, but this industry is really hard. Less than 1% of people make it in this industry, honestly. It's like professional sports or whatever else. And so that stress level, on top of just life itself, if you don't take time to take care of yourself, you are fucked. So you have to understand that. And I think anybody out there listening, and we're guilty of this. We do this. We put 24/7, 365, grind and hustle, and yeah, but that doesn't mean you actually have to be 24/7 every second of every day doing something. Part of that 24/7 has to be focusing on you and here, and because that's part of the grind and part of the hustle. But I'll be honest with you. I just and maybe you could talk about this a little bit, but I have yet to figure out the insomnia. I cannot shut down at the end of the night. Physically, I do. And but mentally, I feel like I, I cannot. And even when I shut down, I'm not even talking about crazy ant stuff. I'm not even talking about. I'm focused on, did I write what I wanted to write today in my journal? Did I make that phone call I wanted to make? Did I do this? It's ridiculously small stuff that I just sit there and ponder and ponder and ponder and ponder. And I don't know. What do you do to try to avoid that? Because I have yet to figure out how to shut down mentally at the end of the day. I have yet to figure it out.
Well, I definitely feel like, because and this is just an outside perspective looking in, that's for sure. But a lot of your hobbies are creative based. So I feel like, finding different hobbies to where you don't necessarily have to think about creative stuff all the time. Because I know you're really big into politics. So, I mean, there's things like that. But for me, like we've been talking about it a lot. I'm really big into like comedy podcasts
Hmm.
and, different things like that. But mind numbing stuff that you don't have to think too much about, but are still paying attention to. I feel like, it's a good way to make the gears move slower. That it definitely helps like wind everything down to where, you don't necessarily keep thinking about the stuff you wanted to get accomplished throughout the day or wanted to get accomplished throughout the week or what have you. But I think it's very important because, to be able to find and to keep looking for different things that you may be interested in. Like I'm trying to get into art and I'm trying to get into, more into disc golf and, just keep trying to find different things that interest you that are so far away from the creative side of your brain. I think that's really important just so that you can scroll through, see different stuff that, you find entertaining, but is also completely different from what you're trying to achieve overall in life.
Yeah.
And something else that I also really wanted to talk about is the first year and a half of our relationship just was crazy ant. We
Yeah.
didn't talk about anything else. And it's very difficult to try to transition out of that now. Especially with you being my father-in-law and just trying to, have it be a family dynamic. And even still, like we're still working on that. A lot of our conversations do revolve around movies or television shows or what we want to do. And, we're both still working on, okay, there's so much more to both of our personalities and both of our lives to where this
Yeah.
is not the only thing we need to talk about. And I mean, you did really good about it during the whole wedding time, and I did too. But there was still those few little instances where like, oh man, we could shoot a movie here. We could do this
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we can't talk about this
Yeah.
because
No.
this is not what this
No.
is about. So it's very important for me, and I know it's very important for you, for us to continue building that bond more than just filmmakers, more than just business partners, but actual, father-in-law and son-in-law. So
Yeah.
that's always been very important. I remember because we're both huge sports fans, but we never even watched any sort of sports event until we got to North Carolina. Like I said, a
Yeah.
year and a half
Yeah.
into our friendship. So that's always been very interesting. And I know sometimes Emily gets a little frustrated about it, but I know sometimes when I don't answer the phone, you end up calling her and talk to her for a tiny second. You're like, well, Logan, and then we go on a whole tear about things. And I'm like, we
Yeah.
need to be so much better than that
Yeah.
because, then it affects your relationship with your daughter.
Of
And,
course.
and,
Yeah.
and then it's one of those things that where it's an ongoing process of us trying to work towards like just a better bond. But it's very interesting though, because yeah, we talk about it all the time. I know, and I promise we're not fitness gurus, but exercise really does help slow our brains down. And I know you're a big foodie, so maybe getting more into, different recipes. I know you talk about all the time you're not really much of a baker. Maybe you still keep trying to improve your baking skills or something
Yeah.
like that, uh, finding different hobbies that aren't necessarily in our creative lane that we are trying to achieve it professionally and personally, I guess. That would be my piece of advice because
Cooking.
finding the comedy lane has been very good and finding the I've been very big into podcasts over the past couple years, and you know that.
Yeah.
So that's been very good. Even to the point now where I found one that's literally it's called Trump Trials. So to keep up with all the trials that Trump is going through.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can stay up to date with those. But yeah, I'm just finding different things that interest you that are far away from your professional life. I think that's important.
Yeah, I do like if I do have one escape, it is the cooking. I really do
Yeah.
enjoy cooking and
Hmm.
cooking for other people, not just myself. But I enjoy the process. I like trying new things and coming up with new recipes, or taking an old recipe and punching it up a little bit, or kind of like it is a good little outlet for me. I do enjoy that. The other thing too is for me now, because you're now established, right? You've got the wife, you've got the and so for me now it's difficult to try to, and I'm sure this is why the divorce rate is so high in this industry. I don't, it's difficult to try to date in this industry because
Hmm.
trying to have like, it's one thing when you go home to somebody and you know they're going to be there no matter what. You get there and they're going to be there, right? But when you're dating somebody or you're single, that's not always the case. And if you say, no, I can't make it today because I'm filming or I'm doing this, and then that next time you're available, they're not available because it isn't that where they're home or where you're together and you know at some point you're going to be in the same room. And it's really difficult because I feel like sometimes I'm nervous to say, this is my life, and so this is how you're going to have to roll with it. Because if you're not in the industry, it can be tough. It can be really tough to try to ask somebody to work with that. And so for me, I'm just trying to figure out, do I want to be in the industry with somebody, or do I want to be in the industry with somebody that's not in the industry, or do I like, so how do I go about that? And then so that's been interesting for me. So my personal life is very different. I'm like, okay, I want to be doing this or I want to be doing that, but then I'm so cautious and calculated about it because I'm so worried about how are they going to be when this is how I need to be. Are you okay with that? And it certainly has made it challenging for sure. There's no doubt about that, and especially because I'm older now, so I am at that point where I'm not hitting the scene every night, and I'm not going to the club. I am more of a reserved kind of a guy. When I'm done with I'm coming home kind of a thing. I don't want to go hit the clubs or go out or do this kind of thing, which makes it even more difficult to say, where are we going to go find somebody? I'm not the swipe left, swipe right kind of a guy. So if I'm not going out socially, where am I going to find like who I mean? So it's definitely been an interesting little mix for me. And on the downside of that, the flip side of that, I tend to throw myself more into the work to
Yeah.
avoid having to do that, to avoid having to try to figure that out. Which can in itself cause some anxiety and depression and irritability because I want that escape and yet I'm nervous about the escape and trying to find it's definitely been interesting, but and then it's the for me it's more because I have had to learn how to not be a people pleaser.
Hmm.
I've had to learn how to be okay with me first. And now that I'm doing that and I feel like I am more open and I am more able to focus on the personal side as in the past where I really wasn't, Now it's like, okay, but things are really taking off with the business stuff right at the time I'm finally feeling like I'm good over here. So now what do? Now I've got to try to figure that out because I don't want to jeopardize this because this is finally taking off after putting in all the work. But I don't want to not pay attention to this because this is at the point where I feel like it could now be that. And so that's where I'm at with the balance, man. I'm just trying to be like, what am I doing? How am I doing it? But the one thing that's helped me, and I hope that it helps everybody out there listening too, is, and you know this, at least once a year, I try to do a complete disconnect. I just try to go off grid and I don't answer the phone and I don't answer emails and I try to get away from wherever I'm at in a different locale and just completely go off grid from everything and everybody and just kind of be like me time. And I try to do it once a year and I've been pretty good at it over the last few years of taking those little times. And it really does help. And I feel like I'm trying to get more into you don't have to necessarily leave town to do that. You can still have that disconnect, that off grid, all about you moment without necessarily having to take a trip or going to a different location or different things. So I'm trying to get a little bit better at that. But I do think that that helps me with when I do feel like I'm a bit overwhelmed or where I feel like I'm too focused one way or the other. That disconnect allows me to recharge and go, okay, let me get back into I'm here too much, I'm here too much. And then just kind of bring it back to the middle and go, okay, now I can come back and be okay with both of them. So I think that's extremely important. If people aren't doing that, I think you should do that. Try to find that little just where you just get away from everybody and everything, and just focus and just regroup, recharge because it's so
Yeah.
important.
I completely agree. And it's funny you bring up the relationship part about, trying to date somebody in the entertainment industry or somebody out, because our conversation with an ItCaf podcast guest last night, the last night of this recording, she mentioned that her partner was also in the entertainment industry. And I wanted to talk about, if she dabbled with, seeing people outside of the entertainment industry and what was the challenges with that, because
Yeah,
I mean, of course there's challenges with both.
of
But
course. Yeah,
it's I feel like it all comes down to other people's insecurities and trust and having faith in their relationships, which in turn has faith in you, that type of thing. So yeah, that's funny that you brought that up because that was on my mind too. But yeah, it's very important to, continue to work on yourself while all of these different things are happening, because I feel like, consistency is key. And if there's anything that we are or aren't, we are definitely consistent with everything. We've been doing this consistently for 6 years with strikes, with COVID, with
yeah,
all of this different stuff. We've been very scheduled and we get more and more structured every single year. So I would definitely not try to, shift your weight when it comes to what do I focus more, what do I focus on less? Because right now, I feel like we're in the best spot we've ever been in.
yeah,
We have more people a part of the company than we ever have. And we are, being able to extend our arms and extend our brand to so many different people that have not found us before, but then know us now. And we're able to build that. And we're still doing all of that while focusing on ourselves. So that's always very important. But yeah, I mean, the home and work life balance, we talk about it all the time. We've been talking about it for 6, 7 years. Like, as soon as we are able to not have home offices, that's when it's going to be so freaking easy, man.
yeah.
I
Because you
just,
can just disconnect. Yeah,
yeah, you can just disconnect, but I mean, as any entrepreneur knows, you have to put in the time. You have to put in the work. There is sacrifice. There is a lot of sacrifice because that's what it is. That's what it's all about. And I mean, you have to put yourself in it to where, you're focusing enough of your time on the product or on the situation to where you feel like you're going somewhere, but you also don't want to miss out on life. You don't want to miss
Yeah.
out on experiences. You don't want to miss out on potential memories that might formulate while you may or may not be working, even if it's on something you know and love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's always so important to be able to try to think about. But it's always that second guessing yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I focusing enough time on this or that? So that's always very important. But like I said, it being scheduled and being structured, especially if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're in the entertainment industry trying to do what we're doing, it's so important enough to where Emily and I get our schedules. We're like, okay, this is the day we're doing this. This is the day we're doing that.
Yeah.
And, if we can fit other times in there, of course, we'll have our evenings where we're just chilling, watching TV, but specific time that you can make memories, it's very important. That's why, I mean, I kind of knew it when I was growing up because my mother was always so formulaic with making lists throughout the day, and I always thought she was crazy until I started with you and Crazy Aunt, and I
Yeah.
was like, man, this is really how you have to be, though. This is how you
It
have
is.
to be successful because you are able to still work on your passion, still work on your job, still work on the things you want for the future, but then you are still able to make memories. You are still able to smile. You are still able to unwind, relax, and not, overwhelm yourself. And that's the biggest thing. Realizing where your bar is when it comes to you being overwhelmed, because
Yeah.
if you're up here, you're getting close. Okay, just relax, just stop. No matter what's happening, just stop. It's all good because if you get past the point of being overwhelmed, then both your personal and your work life are not going to be in good
Yeah.
places.
No.
So you just always have to check in with yourself. That's like what we've been talking about this whole conversation is putting yourself first, no matter what, no matter if it's your professional self, your personal self, but your mental health needs to be first so that you know how to just be the best you can be in every circumstance. It's so important.
Well, I liken it to think of this way, right? Because we're talking about two different, right? Life,
Hmm.
business, right? And then we're saying come to the middle and focus on you. So anybody out there listening, try to imagine this: you're on a tightrope and you're walking, and you've got one leg or arm hanging way over here because you're in the business world, and you've got one leg and arm way over here because you're trying to balance over here. If you don't focus here, you're falling. You're falling one way or the other. So you have to remember to stay here if you want balance here. That's how it has to be. And I feel like when we lean too far this way or too far this way, we lose that balance and, and you're in huge trouble from that point. So now just visually picture yourself when you're trying to go after something on both sides of it and you're trying to make sure you're doing it equally. Picture yourself as that tightrope walker. Am I spending too much time over here? Am I spending too much time over there? Or am I right where I need to be, right here? Because that's how you're going to get it done. And I just think, you got to. And the other key thing is making sure you've got people in your life that know that you are, hey, are you having a bad day? Hey, you need to take a break. Hey, this isn't okay. Hey, you've got to have people in your life that understand, one, what you're trying to do, both sides. This is my dream. This is my dream. They're both where I want to be and where I want to go. You need somebody who understands that. And then you need somebody who understands if you're having a bad day, it's okay. Hey, I'm going to leave you alone today. I can tell you're a little bit stressed out. I'm going to give you that space. I'm going to kind of give you that thing. Because if you've got the person or people in your life that are like, you're not spending enough time with me. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And I'm talking about on both sides. If you got business people that are telling you that or personal people that are telling you that, they're basically fucking you up. You need somebody that just needs to understand this is where you're trying to go and they need to be there for you. But also give you that space to figure it out, because that's so important. I feel like if you surround yourself with the wrong people, you also will never get that balance, because that's part of it. That's part of having that support system. We talk about that on this podcast all the time. Support systems and people that can get you through and are going to keep you straight and keep you in line, and I think that's critically important. If you don't have that, it can lead to all kinds of things. So when you are trying to balance that personal life, make sure the people in your personal life are the people you need in your personal life. And sometimes you don't always have a choice in the business world. Sometimes you get stuck throwing people at and people you have to work with, or you don't know, but it's always your choice in the personal life, right? You decide who comes and goes there. And I feel like you've got to make those right choices there. And I feel like, so far, I think we're pretty good. I think we're doing pretty good. I know I've got people, family and friends, that I can just literally call up and say, hit me with something. Hit me with some positive stuff. I'm having a bad day and I need a little help. Or sometimes you don't even have to call. I've got people in my life that just, hey man, how's it going? I feel like you're a little off today. Well, are you okay? What's going on? Kind of a thing. That helps, because I feel like that going back to that analogy, I feel like if they see you starting to fall, they just let me push you right back. You got this. You're not going off there. And you need those people. And I think that's critically important for anybody out there trying to balance these two worlds, whatever your profession is. Because we're not trying to say that whatever you do is not as hard as what we do in the entertainment industry. That's ridiculous. No matter what profession you're in, you are dealing with challenges. You are dealing with news. For Christ's sake, I mean, working all those years in news, the news never stops. It's 24/7, and you are expected to be a part of it. If that's your career, you are expected to never miss a story. You are expected to be out on that street. You are expected to, that is tough on a relationship. That is like, you get the call at 2:15 in the morning about a car crash. Tell your wife with the new baby you got to go. But the baby's crying, but the car crash, I gotta go, So we understand it's not just entertainment industry, it's any profession that you are trying to deal with. There are challenges, and so we're here for you guys. We too are going through that struggle, but I think we are doing a better job. You're right, we used to be, we would did you catch that show? Holy shit, did you watch that movie? Okay, we got to watch the Oscars. But now we are talking about sports, and we are talking about politics, and we are talking about more world life stuff that isn't this or that. And I've enjoyed that. I've kind of that broadening of the relationship outside of our industry is I think it also makes us stronger within the industry and being able to relate with the industry stuff. Being broader on the outside, I think it just helps all the way around, because we have a better understanding of where you're coming from when you come to the industry, your thought process on, especially as filmmakers, and we're co-directors and we're co-writers, but we come from very different aspects. We have a lot of similar stuff in our backgrounds, but also very different. So to understand each other better and get a better balance of who we are as individuals makes us a much better team. Because like in marriage, like in a relationship or in business, you have to know that while you're a team, you're also still individuals. And you have to be able to make sure that works. Because if you ever go from team to codependent, it's a disaster. And that's in business and in personal life. Remember, you're together, but you're still separate. Don't go from here to here, because this is where trouble starts. So you got to be able to go here. And I think that's the best advice that I can really give anybody out there. Whether you're talking about a boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever your sexual, whatever, relationship, or whether you're talking about marriage, or whether you're talking about a business union, or whatever the case may be, remember that you are always an individual. And you have to, and it comes back to what we've been saying this whole conversation. You focus on you. Because you can't be any good to this if you're not good this. And so I think that's the answer. How do you balance? Here. That's how you balance. I don't think there's any other answer to the question. I really don't.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And I mean, we want to hear from you as well. So we want to start this new thing to where maybe at the end of every episode, we can go over some emails from, guests or from you guys, all the listeners out there. If you want to share your story, please be sure to do so. We can talk about this specific topic next week. We can talk about the emails that will be sent in. So if you want to email us at info@crazyantmedia.com and talk about how you balance your work and home life. Please, we want to know. We don't know everything. So if
No.
you have a particular structure or a particular, system that you use, we would love to hear it. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners would as well. And we'll share it next week or the next episode because it's a bi-weekly podcast. But yeah, I'm super excited to start
Yeah.
this whole new segment because it lets us get more personal with all of the fans, all of the listeners who are always just trying to better themselves. So I really appreciate everybody who will be doing this. It's going to be a fun time. I'm excited to see what kind of emails we're going to get. Like I said, info@crazyantmedia.com and talk about your home versus work life and how you try to balance that. I think it's going to be a really fun thing to explore. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
And even if you don't feel comfortable with a topic that we're discussing, email us your success story. Tell us about a great mental challenge, thing that you were dealing with that you overcame and that you got through. Or if you're having a bad day and you're struggling, shoot us an email and say, Jesus, man, I'm going through this today. Have you guys ever been there, Because share that with us too. We're here for you, and we'll share that. And if you're nervous, we can keep it anonymous, or we'll give you a fake name, or we'll refer to you by an initial, or but talk to us and we'll share, because that's how we're all going to get through it. So whether it's a topic that we're talking about, or you're just having a really great day that maybe you think can help somebody else, or you're having the shittiest day of your life and you just want to vent, that's what we're here for, man. info@crazyantmedia.com is your vent portal. Just give it to us, and we're gonna. I love it. I like you. I think it's gonna be a great segment. I think it's gonna start a lot of conversations. And the people that come up and talk to me and just share stories about life, if you just shoot that email to me. We'd be good for like 3 years right now. So if we can start to develop that over the podcast the way we do in personal life, it'll be really fun, and I think that the listeners will really enjoy that. So it's gonna be fun, man.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode 24, I believe.
Yeah.
Episode 24, which is absolutely crazy.
I know.
It's in the name, Crazy Ant Media. But be sure to follow all of our social media accounts, but this one specifically at Everything's OKP on Instagram, X, and Threads. And be sure to follow Crazy Ant Media on all social media platforms. We appreciate everybody who tunes in every single week. Y'all are absolutely amazing. And we are able to have these bi-weekly therapy sessions that do help us in the long run. So like I said, we definitely appreciate it. We have some great guests coming up on this podcast and the other podcast. So be sure to tune in to ItCaf podcast as well. So just stay up to date with everything happening at Crazy Ant Media by going to our website, www.crazyantmedia.com. And like we say every single time, remember, everything's okay.